let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. This is another highly controversial topic right now. James actually put a freaking ton of notes in the document.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
funny
good.
because
Yeah.
I had a meeting with him recently where he talked about how he was going to talk to one of the other writers about putting less detailed notes in the doc because he and the writer who wrote it were realistically the only ones that were actually going to read it to that level of detail because he knows that
Yeah.
like we don't read them
We
carefully.
need something we can skim, these like giant paragraphs or
But there is actually some really good info here. So why don't we run through some of it? The question is, should you leave WhatsApp?
yes.
So let's go.
It varies. Basically, some of the information that was disseminated very recently about WhatsApp and about the information that was going to be shared between WhatsApp and Facebook was incorrect. There has been clarifications posted by Facebook explaining what's going on, and essentially information, messages, etc., between yourself and like your friends or family members or whatever is theoretically not going to be shared. It's just going to be messages between you and a business on WhatsApp that is shared, that is optional at the same time. And users who opted out of all information sharing back in 2016, I believe, are opted out of this, but no other users are. Yeah. So it's not like all the information on WhatsApp. It's just the business stuff. And your messages between friends, family, etc., are still encrypted and whatnot. And I believe they even use, they use the Signal protocol anyways. And Signal is the main thing people are pointing, including myself, are pointing that people should go use. So, I would still just move over to Signal personally. I think that's still the answer. I just think the reason for that answer has definitely changed, and it's not as bad of a situation as we thought it was, which is good, but I would still move to Signal personally.
So from my point of view, this does make me feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
My understanding, not looking at it that closely initially, was like, oh, okay, basically WhatsApp is now another data collection tentacle that
That's
Facebook
what I
can
thought it
use
was too.
to squirm their way into the details of your life. And I was extremely frustrated because the reason I used WhatsApp in the first place was because my understanding was that it was end-to-end encrypted and that the service provider would not have any access to the communication that I was sending and receiving over it. So that was like the whole freaking point. And it's like, it started to feel like, man, am I going to have to do this like every couple of years? So when Google or Microsoft comes in and buys Signal another year or two from now, am I going to have to like keep jumping between messaging applications? And now that I see this, I'm like, oh, maybe it's like, it's not that I don't still think it's a good idea to switch over to Signal or Telegram, but it's more like, is it worth the hassle? But then there's a danger there. If every time we ask this question, Facebook is kind of moving the goalposts just a little bit.
Straight up lied about this stuff in the past.
Yes. So if they're moving the goalposts just a little bit, and every time it's like, not enough, it's not worth the hassle, then there is that danger that at some point you're going to end up way past the line where you intended to be. And you're going to be somewhere where you feel like you've forgotten that you're not comfortable with it. That's the reason why I might look at it and go, yeah, okay, this is probably worth it.
Yeah, Facebook has lied to the face of everyone they possibly could in the past about this type of stuff. So the clarification is good, and it makes me less like I need to make sure everyone I know gets off of this thing.
Yeah.
But I would still suggest that people move off of WhatsApp.
Now let's go back and let's
clearly getting their grubby little fingers in there.
Let's talk about that mentality. Like the everyone I know absolutely needs to get off of this mentality. Because the cold hard truth is that most of the people you know already use Facebook anyway. And I don't want to be that guy that's like, well, you shouldn't care about your privacy because it's already not private. But if you already use Facebook, like, who cares? Honestly,
Sort of. It
honestly.
depends what you're using it for. I think
Sure,
text messages are quite all encompassing, and you get text messages from anytime there's any security hole. Like
sure.
if Facebook is like, yeah, we're going to share this information internally, that's increasing the amount of points of access. So like if you don't have that, that's good. I got a text message from my credit card company today. That was unfortunate, but it's something that can happen, right? So
Yeah.
like I would rather those messages were private. And at least myself personally, like I have a Facebook account. I originally made that Facebook account because people were making fake ones of me, and that was annoying.
I remember that
um,
actually.
yeah, and I only use it for communication with my like very 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 close family, and I don't have it installed on my phone.
Right.
So like it's not able to scrape info from that point. It's only in a browser, and I only use it for that type of communication. So it's pretty limited, and I feel like a lot of people's usage of Facebook these days is becoming more and more limited.
Best in getting one of those kits and getting tested, and I had expressed my strong preference that they not do it because of how closely blood related they were to me and how much information that puts out there about me.
Yeah,
And they went and did it anyway. So I'm like, actually, I'm still like pretty off about that. I'm not impressed. I sent like very long, detailed, and I think very cogent argument for why I felt like it was important for them to not do that. And I was ignored. So there's like there's a certain amount of just respect for the people that you correspond with when it comes to choosing secure messaging applications. Actually, I'm all fired up about this now. So here's what I sent. I've been deciding whether to send this or not. It might not affect whether you decide to use the genetic test you got for Christmas, but these tests are not well regulated, and we've only begun to explore the way that the data in them will be used by private companies and government entities. I felt like I needed to speak up. Here's some reading material. When you do one of these genetic tests, and I linked to an article that kind of explained it. When you do one of these genetic tests, it doesn't just affect you and your privacy, it affects anyone related to you, including me, helping them build out their database. Their privacy policy may prevent them from selling individualized data at this time, but we've seen many times that Silicon Valley companies will start out with robust privacy policies and slowly chip away at them over time. We've also seen acquisitions and mergers that do not preserve these protections. The issue is that unlike an interest in cars or whatever, your genetic information doesn't change, so this data is given up permanently. I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer by any stretch of the imagination, but given what is already accessible to advertisers, insurance agencies, etc., I would rather pay for you to have a genetic test done in a medical/diagnostic setting if you really want to know. That way the data will at least have a chance of being safe. And basically what was sent back to me was, your message adds to the consideration for sure, in more words. And then I never heard back, and it was sort of mentioned in offhand conversation later that this individual had just gone ahead with it, and I don't know. I felt kind of
I don't
violated,
understand.
to be
I
honest with
would
you.
have, like, if I was that person, I would have absolutely just taken you up on your offer. Been like, hey, I can get a better one done that's also like more confidential. Like, cool.
I would have
Okay.
been happy to pay for it. Like, that's a trivial expense from my point of view for something like this. And I know that I do tend to have a pretty laissez-faire attitude when it comes to things like my digital information, at least that which I decide to share publicly. And the reason for that is, back to the ship has sailed argument. My ship has sailed. I am a digital influencer at this point. There are literally thousands of hours of footage of me on Google and Facebook servers. Like, my privacy is dunzo. If Google wanted to, they could know absolutely everything about me based on just cross-referencing information things that I've talked about, things that I've shown in videos. Nothing is a secret to them about me at this point. But something like, again, back to the argument that I made about genetic information and the fact that it doesn't change and that it's just irreversible. Like, this is not a trivial, like, oh, gee, I wonder if I have some, like, Irish in me. That's not that kind of decision you're making. That's a
Yeah.
terrible, terrible approach. So, yeah, again, back to WhatsApp then. For me, like, what I ate for dinner, or like what widget I'm thinking of buying, like the kinds of things that I talk about in text message, to me is not terribly important, but I'm also in kind of a unique position where I do literally none of my own confidential communication. Like I don't do any of my own banking. My wonderful chief financial officer over there does all of it. So I don't know. So Luke, tell me this. Would you feel betrayed if I was like, "No, Luke, forget it. I'm staying on WhatsApp and if you want to talk to me, you're going to have to talk to me on WhatsApp." Are you
No,
thinking or muted? Oh, okay.
I was thinking. No, I don't think so. My reason is just that I would censor my communications to you.
Sure. And that's fair. That's fair enough.
And that would have to just be the trade-off, is it's going to be like a partially muted conversation.
I think both you and I are kind of chat application chameleons, though. Like, there's people that I encounter, like, in the real actual world that are like, hey, don't bother applying to join this group or this team if you don't use iMessage. Or like, don't bother replying to this dating profile if you don't use iMessage. And I'm sitting here going, what? Like I was talking to James about this earlier. That's one of the reasons that this is in the doc. And I was like, yeah, like to me, what difference does it make? What application shows at the top of the notification shade, or like whether this one supports stickers or that one has animojis or this one has cheers, or like, who cares? There are no less than, I think it was 10 chat apps. And I counted things like Twitter and Instagram as like private messaging apps, because realistically, that's like what they are for a lot of people. There was no less than 10 on my phone. And I'm just like, so what? So I think you have kind of a similar attitude to me, where you'll just kind of use whatever other people happen to use. But some people are very set in their ways. They're like, yeah, I only use this. It's like,
well, I have like, we have different, like, I have different layers of chat apps, essentially. Like for the same person.
What layer am I in?
Well, no, but like for each person.
Am I in the top? Am I in the highest tier layer? You
depends on how you define each layer. But like, there's like
a cop out answer.
Like I generally don't send people. Like I'll try to keep Slack messages mostly focused on work.
Yeah.
If I want to send you a message about some game thing, I'll probably send you a message over Discord.
Yep.
If I'm trying to send Linus a message about work, honestly, we chat about most things on Teams, but sometimes I'll try to keep the more off-topic things on Discord. I'll keep the more work-focused things on Teams.
Yep.
I'll like, certain things will go to email if it's something that I think should be like searchable. Like there's a bunch of different reasons why something is going to go through a certain method or not.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I just use everything and try to just gauge like which one makes most sense at whatever time.
And I'm kind of the same way, like without really thinking about it, hearing you talk about that, it's totally the same. So whenever I'm talking about something personal and or confidential, WhatsApp has actually been my tool of choice. So Yvonne and I almost exclusively talk through WhatsApp about anything that is like HR related or personal and private. Personal or private, whether it's work or personal. If it's private, it kind of goes in WhatsApp. Because as much as it annoys me, a feature of WhatsApp, for better or for worse, is that it's only logged in on one device at a time. So there's no risk of me accidentally leaving my laptop around or a secondary phone that I have signed in and somebody seeing a highly confidential upper management message because it'll only be on the phone that's in my pocket. So that's a reason for that. And then I just have some legacy people that we've just kind of always used Hangouts. So I still chat on Hangouts there. With you, it tends to be Discord and Teams, or realistically, because you never check your messages anyway, I'll just call you if I actually need to communicate with you. So there's that, especially outside of hours.
Yeah. Like I still talk to James through Hangouts. I usually use Hangouts or Teams with Yvonne. Like but I don't even really have to think about or remember these things. It's just like, oh, I have to message this person. I just kind of automatically go to whatever thing I'm used to using with that person.
We need a new
A new pigeon
Trillion. Yeah. Or
or
okay.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. All right. This is an older code, sir, but it checks out. What was Trillion? It was ICQ, AIM, and I forget what the third one was. It was called Trillion because there were three
Try.
messaging
Yeah.
and MSN. I think it also did MSN. I just want, if the day that Microsoft launches MSN Messenger,
I jump on it
I
immediately.
I will go to it immediately just to be back on MSN. Just to hear
Yep.
those notification sounds again, man. I love it. I love it. It's one thing, it's something that I've never really understood. Like how people as a whole migrate from one platform to another and why they bother. Like why it was super trendy to be on AIM and then super trendy to be on ICQ and then super trendy to be on MSN. And is it just as simple as soon as the parent generation joins it, it's not cool anymore and you have to get off? Like why did it
I
ever
mean,
matter?
that might be part of the reason why Facebook's sort of falling a little bit.
Well, it's totally
Um,
part of the reason why Facebook is falling in popularity with Zoomers. But it's like it's not like some of these applications haven't had things like shadow do not disturb and things like that. Like it's not like you couldn't just pretend to your parents that you're not online. It was always
yeah.
the thing. Like MSN had that. You could appear offline to people. And, you know, when you caught a friend doing it, it was so scandalous, of course.
Were you able to show offline to individuals, or was it one big flag?
I believe you could appear offline to individuals MSN Messenger. I believe you did. How to have MSN Messenger show as appear offline upon boot up. Yeah, that was a really inconvenient thing. There was a while where, I remember this, there was a while where it was kind of bugged so that if you signed in as appear offline, it would show you online for a second and then immediately offline. And people would be like, I know you're there.
Man, I remember you mentioned scandalous. I remember one of my friends used to, when someone wouldn't tell them a secret, they'd be like, "Oh, just tell me in like Wingdings or whatever, Wingdings," and then he would bring them into Word and convert the font.
That's hilarious.
That was actually hilarious.
Oh, no, that's right.
It worked for whatever reason.
So you could appear offline in MSN Messenger, but you could still initiate chats. So you
Okay.
could totally chat as you are offline. How to appear offline? Does anybody have any idea? Okay, I'm looking for how to appear offline. Okay, you can. Oh, and apparently there was like tools that you could use to appear offline to just one person. But for my part, I think a lot of the time I was just in appear offline, and then I would just chat with people I actually wanted to chat with.
Right.
You know what we should probably do, speaking of chatting, is chat with you guys about our sponsors for, oh wait, so hold on. There's one more thing we got to go through here. So ranking message services security. Signal encrypts end-to-end, does not back up your messages to iCloud or its own servers. This is the most secure option, and also the option that's most likely to lead to data loss or getting locked out of your own account. So that's a trade-off. WhatsApp still does encrypt your messages end-to-end with the same protocol as Signal and does not back up your messages to its own servers. By default, it does not back up messages to iCloud either, but that is an option. I've also found that its backup is extremely spotty. The only way to get it to work is to like specifically back it up, then log out, then log in on the other one. If you kind of screw up that order, then you can be missing a bunch of stuff, which is interesting. If you enable the option, your messages can be accessed by Apple, who has the keys for iCloud, and by extension, it can be accessed by law enforcement without a warrant. Number 3 is a tie between Telegram and Facebook Messenger. So they do not end-to-end encrypt. Oh, I actually didn't know that Telegram does not end-to-end encrypt by default. They are stored on Telegram servers where they are secured by Telegram's keys, but they can also be seen by law enforcement. So yeah, it looks like Signal's basically just the way to go. And then there's iMessage, blah, 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 messages accessed by Apple, etc. through iCloud unless you turn that off. Blah, blah, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, Signal is the way to go if you actually want to be private. Honestly, I'm lazy and everyone I want to talk to is already kind of on WhatsApp, so I'm just probably going to stick with it for now unless things get really bad.